that healthcare thing that they unveiled today. You know, and it's a good reminder of why I need to get to the Senate. But I don't think even people understand how bad that. Anyone see that bill? The Senate version that came out?
2,086 pages.
Yeah, but what you don't understand, I'll get into my presentation, but what people don't understand when they read this bill actually destroys the health insurance industry completely. Just about every health insurance provider will go out of business if this plan is passed. Because what it does is it makes it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against pre-existing conditions. And it makes it illegal for insurance companies to charge somebody who has an illness more than somebody who's totally healthy. So what it does is it means there's no point. They eliminate the need for insurance. Why buy insurance if you can just wait until you get sick? Why spend all that money on premiums year after year? Because if you don't get sick, I mean, you wasted your money. Just wait until you get sick and then buy the insurance. So the insurance companies can't function anymore because they no longer have any premium income coming in to pay out claims. So they have to go bankrupt because otherwise they have no customers until people get sick. And then they immediately start drawing down claims. Now the government pretends that, well, they've got the answer because they have a penalty on you if you don't buy insurance. But for the first year, and that starts in 2014, the penalty is $95. $95. I mean, who wouldn't pay that penalty to not have to have insurance? But you still have it because if you get sick, then you go get it. So the penalties are too low. Even under the highest penalty, it goes up to $75. I mean, $750 a year. That's still a fraction of what it costs for insurance. So nobody will buy insurance. They'll just wait till they get sick. But the problem is, there'll be no insurance companies in business when you get sick because they would have already shut their doors because they stopped collecting premiums. So the only insurance company that you can go to will be this government provider. But the government provider will be bankrupt because it won't have any premiums because nobody will be paying into it. And the crazy thing is, the government is planning on financing the health care package by taxing the insurance industry. Well, it's not even going to be there. What are they going to tax? So basically what this really is it's the camel's nose under the tent for socialized medicine. Because what's going to happen is once they bankrupt all the insurance companies, what's going to happen is whenever you get sick, the government's just going to have to pay for everything. Because there's going to be no insurance. Either government insurance or private insurance. So it's going to be socialized medicine, but of course it's going to cost a fortune. Because there is going to be no premiums coming in. So I mean, the fact that the senators can write this shows that they're completely oblivious to what insurance means. Here they're trying to overhaul the insurance industry. They don't even have a clue how it works. And so the fact that they can pass this, these guys they're morons. Now, hopefully, the insurance industry will knock some sense into their heads and realize that you can't pass this. And but the House version is not quite as bad because of the penalties are much higher, so people will buy insurance under the House plan. But ultimately, it will have the same result. In the meantime, this plan, even though it doesn't start until 2014, and I think the reason they pushed off the start date is because then Obama maybe can get reelected one more time before we realize how bad it is, because it doesn't start until 2014. But all the taxes to finance it start right now. So all the tax increases happen now. So the government has all this money to do whatever it wants with, because none of it is going to go for health care. But anyway, so that's a disaster. But I need to be there to make sure that legislation like this never gets written. But anyway, I'm Peter Schiff. And I'm running, for the U.S. Senate. And the reason I'm doing this, I've never, held elected office. I've never sought elected office. I'm a private citizen like you guys. I'm working. I run a small business. I run a brokerage firm in Westport, Connecticut. I've been investing my client money, my own money, for years. Unfortunately, because of the destructive policies coming out of Washington, D.C., both from Congress, the President, the Federal Reserve, I've had to invest my money and my clients' money outside the United States. I've had to buy stocks in China. I've had to buy precious metals. I've had to buy commodities. I've had to do all sorts of things to protect the wealth of my clients from Washington, D.C., because I understood that the policies that they were implementing would undermine our economy and destroy our currency. And therefore, I couldn't, in good conscience, advise my clients to invest their money here, knowing that it would be a disaster. So I had to get them to invest abroad. And things got very, very bad. And by 2005, I decided to write a book called Crash Proof: How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse. Because at that point, in my mind, the housing bubble had been blown to such a proportion that I was convinced when it burst, it was going to take down the entire economy. I thought the major banks would fail. I thought Freddie and Fannie would fail. I thought we would be in the worst recession since the Great Depression. I thought unemployment would be in double digits and the dollar would get killed. And I saw all these problems coming because this was this gigantic bubble, and I knew it would burst. And so I wrote this book predicting the collapse. And then I started going on a lot of television shows in 2005, 2006, 2007, predicting all this economic doom. CNBC, labeled me Dr. Doom before they even knew who Mario Rubini was, and and people would laugh at me and kind of make fun of me, but they had me on regularly. I was on 2 or 3 times a week on CNN, on Fox, on Bloomberg, CNBC, predicting all this. And then it happened. All the things that I was saying were going to happen happened, and then more people started to find out about me because they were reading my books, and people were putting up a lot of videos of me on YouTube. If you have a chance, if you go. One that a lot of people saw was a video called Peter Schiff Was Right, which has been seen by about 1.6 million people. And it's just kind of a compilation of some of my appearances where I would make a prediction and everybody would laugh at me. And so it's very funny in hindsight because, of course, we know what happened. And when I was making these predictions, one of the predictions that I made that unfortunately has come true, it was not simply that I foresaw how the housing bubble was going to implode and what it was going to do to our financial institutions and our economy. But my real concern was what government was going to do in response to the crisis. And that I knew that it was not going to be the disease that was going to kill us, but the government cure. And that is the reason that I feel compelled to run for the Senate, to make sure that this doesn't happen. That the worst case scenario, which unfortunately is now the most likely scenario, doesn't pan out. Because what our politicians don't understand is that they are the problem. They can't stimulate the economy because the economy is sick because of government stimulus. And the more they stimulate, the sicker it's going to get. And if you go back, just go backwards in time 8 years, and you can really get a good understanding of this concept. We had a stock market bubble in the 1990s. And we had that bubble because of the Fed. The Fed kept stimulating the economy with low interest rates. Every time there was a problem, whether it was Asian debt default, Russia, long-term capital management, Y2K, whatever it was, the Fed always stimulated by cutting interest rates. But all that cheap money kept going into the stock market. And stock prices kept rising, especially for tech companies and internet companies, despite the fact that none of these companies were profitable. And so we invested a lot of money based on very poor decision-making during that bubble. But we were under the influence of the Fed, of their cheap money, of all that, alcohol. When George Bush made the comment late in his presidency when he was trying to describe the crisis, and he defined it as, well, Wall Street got drunk and they did all these stupid things. Well, sure, they were drunk, but he didn't bother to explain why, where they got all the alcohol. Right? They got the alcohol from the government, from the Federal Reserve. Alan Greenspan was the bartender. He kept pouring the moonshine, and Congress made sure the bar never closed. So, of course, they were drunk, and they did all these stupid things, just like we did stupid things in the 1990s. I mean, maybe some of the people in here bought some of those crazy stocks, right? None of that would have happened with sound monetary policies. But when that bubble burst, and George Bush got elected, instead of leveling with the American public and letting us know, hey, we did a lot of stupid things, now we got to pay the consequences, we're going to have a pretty severe recession, he wanted to stimulate the economy. His economic advisor said, we can't have this recession. You might not get reelected. We need to do something to postpone the pain. And so they decided to do this stimulus. And the stimulus was slash interest rates down to 1% and run up $300 billion budget deficits. And let's spend money. Let's go into debt and artificially stimulate the economy, like with some kind of steroids. And let's pump it up, and maybe you can get reelected. And so it worked, right? The cheap money fueled the biggest consumer spending binge in world history. We borrowed trillions of dollars from China, from Japan, from Brazil, from Europe, from the OPEC nations, and we spent all the money. We didn't invest it. We didn't build any factories. We blew the money. We bought goods, products, consumer products. We bought trinkets. We bought consumer electronics. We built houses that no one can afford, and then we adorned them with, granite countertops